Hey everyone, welcome to GraphQL Radio, the GraphQL podcast. I'm really happy with our guest today. My name is Avi Iyer with my co-host.
Hey, I'm Nicholas.
And today we're with the Apollo Intern squad and Sashko. Welcome.
Hey. Hey.
Before we get into the show, just some quick housekeeping. We're looking for company supporters for GraphQL Radio. So if you're interested in supporting the show, please email hello@graph.cool, and we'll get in contact with you. The email will be in the show notes. Okay, so let's begin. So today we have the Apollo Intern Squad, and I think this might be your last week at Apollo, so we wanted to kind of have a summary of your time there and kind of highlight each one of you. I personally love the Apollo internship program because last year we had a special intern, David, who's like the hero in my mind. But I think Evans took that this year, in my opinion. So Nicholas and I wanted to get you guys on the show to kind of celebrate your last week and like make sure the community knows all the hard work you guys put in, because I know you did a lot of stuff this summer and there's a lot to show for it. So I'd like to do some introductions first. We'll go, so my left I see is Shadaj. Let's start with you and then we'll go that way. Please tell the audience where you're from, what your major is, and what school you go to. And then also why you even applied to Apollo for an internship.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Shadaj. I'm from San Jose, so I'm pretty local to the California area. So yeah, for major, I don't have a major. I'm a high school student, so I'm a rising senior at High School down in San Jose. And really, I ended up at Meteor and the Apollo team just because I really love working on open source stuff. I've been doing that for many years, and just the impact that you can have as an intern on the Apollo team is super awesome. And working with the open source community is super great.
Wow, so you've been programming in diapers, huh?
Yeah.
Awesome. Dang, you're in high school, you're a senior?
I'm a rising senior, yeah.
You're gonna be a senior?
Yeah.
So you're like 17 years old?
Yeah.
Holy crap. You know what I was doing at 17? Not that. All right, great. Let's move on.
Hi, I'm Ramya. I'm a rising sophomore at MIT. I'm studying electrical engineering and computer science. And I wanted to intern at Meteor just because I thought, or I don't know, I kind of think working on like consumer-facing products that are like Twitter or Facebook, Snapchat, things like that are like kind of silly, I guess. And I thought it would be a lot more rewarding to work on something that could be used by like both individuals and like large companies and have a really be like extremely useful and have a really good impact.
Awesome.
Very cool. Yeah.
All right, next.
Hey, I'm Evans. I'm a master's student at Carnegie Mellon in electrical and computer engineering.
Nice.
And I applied to Meteor and Apollo because of Meteor, actually. So at the time it was cutting edge, and I thought it was super exciting and innovative, and gradually got more exposed to Apollo and GraphQL and got more and more excited.
Wow, so we have a range of expertise from high school to master's here. That's great. Sasha, could you talk about the application process and how does one become an intern at MDG?
There's like a whole bunch of different avenues. I think, we do a little bit of college recruiting. So sometimes we go to career fairs and stuff like that. And that's nice. But I think a lot of our interns we've ended up with kind of serendipitously, like people who have applied, in May, right before the summer starts. Or people that we've come across just from like some random forum or board, or like, Divot knew Jeff through like some sort of science fair competition.
Interesting.
And I guess the one thing in common is like, if you feel like you would enjoy being an intern on Meteor or Apollo or anything else that we do, just like reach out to us. Like, it's not a big deal. And, especially, if you're not ready to be an intern, you can also contribute to some of the open source stuff, which is always, it's a lot easier than it sounds. You just have to show up and be like, hey, what can I do? So I think like, it's great that the interns that we have are all from like pretty diverse places. It's not like we went to one school and like got everyone at once.
All right, super cool. Yeah, very interesting. All right, so now that we got the introductions out of the way, we'd really like to hear what you guys are working on at Apollo. So like, what are the kinds of projects? Do you have one big project that you have been working on for the whole summer, or like smaller things that you've been working on? And let's start on the left again with Shadaj.
Yeah, so I have one major project, one minor project. So the major project is redesigning how caches work in Apollo. So right now, whenever you get your GraphQL results, we put them in our normalized cache, but that implementation was baked into the client. There was no way to change that or customize it for your use case. So what I worked on is part of this ongoing effort with Apollo Client 2.0 to make the client more customizable with Evan's links. So my kind of addition to that was a cache API. So now we have a general cache API that anyone can implement and provide their own implementation of a cache. So we provide our own cache implementation for you to get started with Apollo quickly. We're actually making a lot of performance improvements now with that. So just recently we made changes to how we invalidate your queries when we get new data, and with that, Apollo Client can be up to 5 times faster in some cases. So we're making huge performance gains there. And other advantages are things like now you can use Apollo Client without having to use Redux. If you want to use something like MobX instead, you can use that. In the future, we're looking to have support for things like an offline cache. So using something like IndexedDB. So then you can have like your progressive web app that stores all of your cache data offline. So then you can use it, your app on the go. And really just making this cache so that anyone, depending on their use case, can customize it to fit their app best. So that's the cache API. The other project, this is something that started like 2 weeks ago from like, I was bored on a weekend and I wanted to work on something cool. So I wrote a Scala.js wrapper for Apollo Client.
Yeah, I saw that.
All right, yeah.
So Scala is a great language. It works great with it works great with GraphQL. So things like Sangria works for your backend. Scala.js is a compiler from Scala to JavaScript, so then you can run Scala in your browser. And what I worked on is wrapping React Apollo, which is our React wrapper around Apollo Client, in Scala.js. So now you can write Scala code that a Scala React app that uses Apollo.
Awesome.
And that was released 2 days ago. And yeah, it's pretty great.
And what Shadaj didn't mention is that that's based on another project that he also wrote called Slinky, which is the thing that lets you use React with Scala.js.
Yeah.
Oh, dang. So from what I gather, you had to rewrite a lot of Sashko's code for this API, huh? I wrote some of that code too, so please delete all my stuff. Great, that's awesome. Yeah, so let's go to Ramya.
Yeah.
I worked on, I guess, a series of smaller projects, I would say. So the thing I spent like half of my summer on was working on the DevTools for Apollo Client. So before I started working on them, or I guess for background, they were built in a week, and they use polling to check. So one of the features of the DevTools is that you can view your queries, mutations, and the store of your Apollo Client app. And they used to use polling, like time-based polling intervals, and pull your Apollo Client app every X number of milliseconds to see if there were any updates in the Apollo Client store, and use that to update what you saw on the app. But if your app loaded too much data, then it would end up blocking your browser, because either the data would take over 100 milliseconds to load and then like it would never stop loading, or it would just like such an overload on your CPU that you couldn't use any of your browser tabs anymore. And it was also really hard to close the browser tab. And so I worked on changing that. So now it's more of a push-based system. So we have a hook in Apollo Client, and whenever the hook detects a change in your Apollo Client store, it'll check to see if that's the tab of the DevTools that you're on at the moment. And if it is, then it'll send over the data to Apollo Client, or sorry, to the DevTools, and only then we'll display it. So it's a lot more efficient now, and like works like multiple or like X times faster, and no longer will lock your browser. So that's a good thing.
Awesome.
I also added a few features to Launchpad, which we're still working on. So we're adding a Prettify button, and then like making improvements for like SEO and making it nicer to share on like Twitter and Medium and other social media platforms.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so the reason we had to do this is because almost all the reviews for the Chrome DevTools are 5 stars, except for a couple 1-star reviews that are like, "This broke my entire browser." Not quit. So hopefully now people won't run into that anymore.
That's awesome. Cool.
All right, let's move on with Evans then.
Cool. So I started, I guess, at the beginning of the summer to give some background on how the ramp up occurred.
Yeah, for sure.
I wrote a tutorial about with React and Apollo as a full stack tutorial. So, client and server. Or excuse me, I continued Jonas Helfer's tutorial, adding custom resolvers and input types for mutations. So that was a good ramp up to get used to what Apollo Client does and React and full stack development in the modern world. Next, we started looking at, as Shadaj alluded to, making Apollo Client more flexible. And a large part of how Apollo 1.9 does things is you add flexibility at the network interface level. And so we wanted to make that more structured and more flexible at the same time. So that's where Apollo Link came in, which is a modular network stack for GraphQL client. And the idea is you have each a bunch of separate Apollo links that you can compose together to form a network stack. So the example I like to use is you send queries and mutations to an HTTP link and subscriptions through a WebSocket link. So we have like composition in a single line and split points. And this is just for your GraphQL operations control flow through your network stack. You can create exactly the client you want because you can add like polling functionality only on the HTTP, where you can add retries only on HTTP. You can modify the operation throughout. You can do an easy logging for a particular portion of your network stack. So that's what I've been working on and working towards now the Apollo 2.0 beta.
That's awesome. Not to take any credit away from the other interns, but Evans, man, my hero, because I personally think that the network interface is like one of the core things that a GraphQL client needs. And having a really modular network interface is going to allow us to do way crazier things in the future. So you got my vote, man. So we talked about these projects, and I'm sure ramp up times are new for maybe people coming from high school or college or even master student. I would like to talk to each one of you guys about what was the biggest challenge you faced during your internship here. Maybe it was a technical problem, or maybe you couldn't wake up on time, like things like that. Let's start with Evans.
Sure. So I'm coming from an operating systems background and like drivers. So moving to full stack web development was like a big step, or at least I thought it was a big step. And then I started digging into the full stack React GraphQL tutorial and then realized, oh, GraphQL makes front-end development and full stack development so simple. And the Apollo ecosystem made that transition in 2 weeks. And then I had a blog post about, more material. So that was kind of the ramp up period. I had to learn React. I had to learn React Router. I had to learn, Apollo clients. And the docs made it reasonably fun, and sitting next to Jonas made it even easier.
Awesome. Ramya?
I'd probably say like fighting with JavaScript on Launchpad stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess like we've been having a lot of problems with minifiers and Webpack and trying to import custom versions of node modules the past few days. And it's just like a lot, like the feature works on localhost, but we can't deploy stuff until we actually have like the tools that you use for deployment. Like we need those tools to work. And like that seems to be a bigger challenge than actually getting the feature out. So it's pretty irritating to like spend some amount of time, develop a feature pretty quickly, but you just can't push it out because you have to figure out how like minifiers work in Webpack and like dealing with custom node modules. So I'd probably say that's like the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I mean, like the node ecosystem too is tough to support. Did you have to, just to talk about Launchpad a little bit, were you responsible in any of those issues that came in like post-launch? Like, did you have to address a lot of like, I would say customer issues or people using it as well? No?
I don't think so.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a clean launch.
Yeah, we've gotten very few actual issues. There's a lot of people requesting new features.
Yeah.
But not too many things that are actually broken, which has been nice.
Cool, man.
Thanks to our friends at Auth0 Extend, who, I mean, they did all the hard work, like all the stuff about deploying code and whatnot. We just had to call an API for that. So.
That's awesome. Cool. Shadaj.
Yeah, so I think in terms of challenges, there are two main things. The first one is my first week of the internship, I had to get used to commuting. In the past, all my internships were in the South Bay, so one of my parents would drop me off or something like that, and it was a very short thing. Now I had to take the Caltrain, get on there, get set up with a Clipper card, figure out the whole process of getting from San Jose all the way up to the office here in SF. That was definitely the first big challenge. But after that, I think the next big challenge was a technical challenge with the new cache API. One of the goals we had with Apollo Client 2.0 is it shouldn't force you to rewrite your entire code base. We want to make the transition as seamless as possible. And so when doing that, things like, oh, how do we make the transition from using Redux to not using Redux in the new client as seamless as possible without breaking all of your code? Supporting features of Apollo Client from the 1.0 series in 2.0, even with the new cache API. I think definitely working on refactoring a lot of things without breaking everyone's code was definitely a very interesting technical challenge. But with the support of Sashko and James, I think we were able to get a pretty great plan for what Apollo Client 2.0 is going to be and how the transition to it using links and the new cache API is going to be.
Awesome. And did you have experience with like benchmarking APIs before and all that? Was that something new for you, or you did that before?
Yeah, this was definitely something new. Benchmarking stuff in the past. In my high school, I work on a robotics team. There we do benchmarks, but they're a very different type of benchmarks. Those are things like you'll run in your JVM, you collect your benchmarks, see if things get faster. Here, things are at a much higher level once you're running in a browser. So definitely understanding how the process goes for benchmarking a JavaScript GraphQL client was it was super interesting. And also the types of optimizations you have to make are very, very different. Here it's things like what type of data structures you use to store your query cache results, things like that was definitely super interesting.
All right. Cool. Yeah. So it seems like you're working on some really, really cool stuff there at Apollo. That sounds super nice. So like in retrospect, if you have to look back at your internship at Apollo, what were things that you particularly liked at the company and also like during the work that you were doing? And like what are things that you might have done differently if you were starting your internship now again? So maybe we can start in the middle this time with Ramya. And you can also already like allude to the company culture and like the whole atmosphere that you experienced at Apollo.
I feel like I'm like some sort of police here.
Maybe Sashko should leave the room for this question.
I think, so in terms of like what I really liked about what I was working on, I think just open source in general is really fun because well, first of all, it gives you like 10 more people to ask questions to, because like with the dev tools, there's like obviously Danielle and Sashko worked on them a lot previously, so I'd ask them for help a lot, but there's also a few core community members who'd contribute to it a lot. And so for example, one of them was running into an issue that I was really struggling to replicate at one point. So after I thought I fixed it, I could just send it to him and be like, hey, can you try this out? And so it's really cool how there's so many people who use your product so much but also contribute to it, because it gives you a lot more people to ask for help and like reach out to and ask for ideas on. So that was super fun. And then I think like in terms of just working here, everyone is really, really friendly and like extremely helpful. Like nobody ever asks for progress updates. They only ask you like how you're doing or like how your work's going, with the intention of helping you even more, which was really great. And working with Sashko is pretty funny because he picks up on like my slang and starts using it. That's pretty funny. And yeah, just like everyone here is awesome and really fun to work with.
Nice. Okay, very cool. Let's continue with Evans.
Sure. So Ramya alluded to the open source, and that's the part I really, really love. So like yesterday we went to a React Wednesday and got to talk to contributors and got to talk to developers who use our stuff. And I've never had that experience of having a face behind the monitor. And given that ability, I know exactly, you know, this feature for error handling is for, you know, Atom. And I've never had that ability to name somebody related to a feature. And open source provides that ability. Also, all of my work, you know, from a selfish standpoint is out in the open. So I love that ability to, you know, develop a personal brand in the Apollo ecosystem. And I think that's a unique position for Meteor.
Cool.
In terms of what I would do better, it's a really hard thing to think about. I've been trying to, and I'm not sure I can come up with anything except maybe to push for more responsibility and to realize earlier that, you know, if I want to join a customer call, all I have to do is ask. If I want to go to a meetup, all I have to do is ask. If I want to, you know, apply to a conference, all I have to do is, you know, say, here's my proposal. Can you guys look over it? So, you know, ask for more responsibility quicker, because it's totally there and the opportunities are just waiting.
Awesome.
Right. That's actually a really good point I've noticed about like you start working or you're an intern and like it's really helpful to be proactive and really think about the kind of things that you want to do and then just like be active, because people are going to support you in what you want to do and you shouldn't hesitate to ask. So I think that's a really valid point, and be proactive when you're starting working, when you just start working somewhere or when you're an intern. Cool. All right. Shadaj, you're the last one this time.
Yeah. So I'm going to just copy the first segment of what Ramya and Evan talked about. I think open source is definitely a very special thing when you're working here at Meteor. I'd say for me, it's really seeing how excited people are about the work you're doing that's really amazing. So for me, working on the Cache API, it's not released, it's just working on in its own branch, but already people are jumping on it, starting to write their own Cache implementations. And being able to work with the community to understand what their use cases are, understand what they would like the client to be able to do, and having that cycle of iteration as I develop the new Cache API, work on making Apollo client work with the API, but then also continually adjust it so that other people can write their own custom Cache implementations for their use cases, I think was really awesome. Also, just seeing the impact you can have working on an open source project is super great. Every week we hold a contributors weekly meeting where we get together all the people, all the core community members who work on Apollo client and its related tooling, and we just discuss the types of things that are going on. And these are people from all sorts of companies. And it's super great to see that the work you're doing is going to have an impact on so many products and people. That's just really amazing to see. For things I wish I had done, I think definitely what Evans brought up about being more proactive with just asking people for help or being involved in more things, especially with Meteor. Meteor is a relatively small company. So I feel here you have the advantage that everyone is super close. That means that at lunchtime, you might just end up talking to Jeff, who's our CEO, just over a normal lunchtime conversation. And I think that's very special that everyone is super accessible at the company. And you can just reach out at any time. I think on a technical side, I would add for me, one thing I wish I'd done is not be super afraid of making big changes. With my work, a lot of it was massive refactoring. One pull request, I completely removed Redux from the client, which was this massive change. And throughout the process, I had like this fear, like, oh my God, I'm gonna completely break the entire client, like if I make this next step. But I think definitely with the support you have from the open source community and from everyone in the company, you be more brave and go make those changes, and everything ends up working out in the end is what I learned now.
That's awesome. That's great. So we definitely have to get all you guys back when your features launch and all that. I think that's why we'll turn it to Sashka right now to talk about the future of all this work. Where are we headed? You guys are not going to be around for the remainder of these projects. So what's next?
Yeah, so, one little known fact about Apollo Client is that like probably 80 or 90% of it is built by interns, whether that's last year or this year. So we're continuing that tradition this year where, almost all of the work behind Apollo Client 2.0 is based on, Evans and Shadaj's stuff. So the next step is continuing that release process, and we're hoping to release a preview of that super, super soon so that people can start trying it out, telling us if it breaks our whole app or if it doesn't. I mean, ideally, it's something you can just slot in and your stuff keeps working, but it's faster and better than before. That's kind of the dream. And so that's the next step there. I mean, there's a lot of work to do in terms of documentation, getting all these different store implementations, new links for the network interface that people are building, putting all that together. Is something that we haven't spent a lot of time on yet because we weren't even sure what we were going to end up with. Like the best way to do the design there was to do the implementation. In terms of the Chrome DevTools and Launchpad, I think this is going to be a really big new initiative for us on the open source team with Apollo, is having something that I've been kind of calling like open source products, where, in the past, what we've focused on mostly is working on libraries and stuff that you install for NPM. But there's only so much you can do for people's developer experience with libraries. And so these tools are some of the first things that we're building that feel a lot more like products, where you can, continuously deploy, you can add features, there's a UI, there's user feedback. That's more of a traditional thing. And I think having some of that stuff on the open source side of our company is going to be really cool for a variety of reasons. Like, one is that, I mean, it's actually, I think it's more complicated, like as Ramya alluded to, like building a product with a UI and with like deployment and stuff like that is actually a lot more work than building a library, where the only thing you have to do is like pass the unit tests, basically. So figuring out how we can make that work and have that work in an open source way, I think is going to be really, really cool. So hopefully we can, iron those things out, make it really easy for people to contribute and deploy that, and then potentially add more different types of products there, if you will.
Cool.
That's great.
Yeah, my favorite thing is that like all the things that you guys are working on are directly like if you guys weren't here, that's what full-time people at our company would be doing. So there's nothing where like a project was a contrived thing that we wouldn't have otherwise been working on. So that's been pretty cool.
That's great.
That's really cool. If in your internship, you really get to work on something that has an impact and you can see like people are using it. So I imagine this must be a really cool feeling. All right. Cool. Thank you so much for all these insights into the Apollo internship program. I think that was a really cool episode with a lot of information and hopefully also inspiration for like the next batch of summer interns to apply at Apollo. Our last section.
Two things to add, sorry.
Of course.
This is probably two in the middle of the episode for people to hear. One thing is we do internships not only during the summer, but anytime. So if you ever wake up and you're like, I don't want to go to school next semester, just call us. And then we'll set you up over here, because that's great. Because it's going to be a lot less exciting around the office without a bunch of interns around. So please join us for winter or fall or spring or anything like that. And the second thing is we're also hiring full-time people to do some of the same kinds of exciting stuff. So if you're looking for an open source engineering job, that's also something that we have. So excited to hear from anybody who's listening to the episode about those things. So just message me about it.
And we'll put the careers page in the show notes so people can go look at that.
Awesome.
Apply directly. Yeah. All right. So the last section, what we do in the show here is the picks, where you can just name a thing that you're really excited about. Can be a book, can be a blog post that you read, can be a cool backpack that you bought. So who wants to start this episode? How about you, Abby?
All right. So the funny thing is, Shadaj actually mentioned my pick earlier, which was the Scala.js and Apollo Better Together blog post. I thought it was a really good introduction to something that probably people don't know or think is possible. Like, I've had experience with Scala.js in the past, and I've never really thought about actually using it for anything, really. But the blog post really is informative about how you can use React and especially Apollo with Scala.js. So for all those like JVM nerds out there, it's totally like a cool introduction. That's my pick.
All right. Let's go from left to right again. So Shadaj, what's your pick?
Okay. I think definitely the thing I've been like super excited in watching the past couple of weeks is Scala Native. So Scala.js is like so last year. Scala Native is the new cool kid on the block. Scala Native is a Scala to LLVM compiler. So now you can run Scala without Node or V8 or even a JVM. You can just run it directly compiled to machine code. It's super cool. I'm really experimenting with it for our robotics team, just because we're looking to have more low-level, more efficient robot control. And so it's super great, and it's super exciting to see where Scala and stuff goes. Yeah.
Cool, that's awesome. All right, Ramya, what's your pick?
Can we come back to me?
Of course. Sure. Let's continue with Evan.
Sure. What I'm really excited about is Apollo Fetch Upload. So as background, Apollo Fetch is the lightweight GraphQL client that supports middleware and afterware. So it's just a simple fetcher. And last night, we just merged in the file upload wrapper around Apollo Fetch that allows you to upload files to GraphQL server upload, which is the first contribution to an Apollo project by Jaden Sarek. And it's a huge feature improvement because file uploads is something that a lot of people have been asking about, and it's amazing to see it come out of the community. And so quickly and so well backed by Jaden.
All right, let's go with Sashko now.
All right. I think what I was thinking of is there's two new meetups that are potentially being organized. That's my most exciting news recently. One is that there's going to be a GraphQL NYC meetup, and the very first one is next Thursday. And luckily enough, I'll be there and James will be there. And so if you're in New York, you can stop by that. I don't know if this episode will come out before then or after then, but either way, you should go and sign up for GraphQL NYC. It's a new GraphQL meetup. And then the second thing is secret, so I'm going to leak it, which is there are people who are working on planning a South Bay GraphQL meetup so that people don't have to travel all the way up to San Francisco to get their GraphQL meetup fix. So if you're in the South Bay and you're interested in helping organize a GraphQL meetup or going to one, let me know or just wait and see it show up on Twitter or something. So more GraphQL meetups, please.
Awesome.
Yeah, very cool. All right, we'll save Ramya for the last. I'll go next. So my pick this week are the videos from Chain React Conf. So I think Chain React Conf is already a couple of weeks back, but they released all the videos, and it's a great YouTube playlist with all kinds of information around React, JavaScript, also one talk about GraphQL. So it's really worth just picking the 3-4 talks you like most from that playlist and just go ahead and watch them. Can really recommend. All right, Ramya, was that enough time?
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go like many years back. I'm like way behind the times, but it's okay. But another one of our interns at Meteor is super into learning Go and kind of convinced me to learn Go as well. So I'm really, and I started learning Go a few weeks ago. So really interested in learning more about the language in general and like about why everyone is so hype about it and learning more about networking in general.
Cool.
That's great.
All right.
Cool. So just want to thank you guys again for being on the show. Really appreciate it. Awesome work, you three. Sashko, do your job. And really hope to actually follow up with these projects as they launch. We'd love to have you guys come back on the show, and we look forward to that. Just like we mentioned in the beginning, for all you listeners out there, if you have a company that would like to sponsor the show, be a part of this community that we're growing, you know, the email will be in the show notes and more information there. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.